Here are some of my commitments. So there's sleep, school, activism, health, hobby, and relaxing time. So I'll give everyone a minute to maybe brainstorm what they want to prioritize as we start this new year, or commitments that aren't flexible, you know, like you have to sleep, you have to eat, stuff like that. And again, maybe just message in the chat when you're done with writing down all of your commitments. Okay, 3 people are done. Perfect. Okay, it seems like most people are ready. So now we get to move on to the more exciting part, which is calculating how much time you want to spend per commitment. So just to give you an idea, when you're estimating this part, I want you to think about an ideal world. So if you regularly only sleep 6 hours a night, I don't want you to budget for 6 hours a night. You should write down 8 hours or however many hours of sleep is ideal for you. And I have school here, and technically I should be spending 5 hours per weekday. Sometimes I don't spend that much time on school and I do other things, but try to picture yourself in this ideal world where you get to spend as much time on things that you would like to. And if you have questions, you can message in the chat. And you don't have to get too nitty gritty into this. It's okay if you just do like general estimates. This exercise is really just to focus on the fact that everybody only has 24 hours in a day, and sometimes people are stressed and overwhelmed because they're just trying to do too much. And again, maybe message in the chat when you're all ready. Perfect. So for those of you who have finished, you can look at your hourly commitments and try adding them all up and see what you get. And then maybe type what you have in the chat so you can see what everybody's commitments are. Mine here add up to 137.5. And if you need help with math or something, you can, yeah, so that's hours per week. So you can also do hours per day if that is easier for you to conceptualize. I also used a calculator, Cassie. Cool, Christian, 22 hours a day. That's good. But yeah. Well, 23 hours a day. That's a lot. So 24 hours isn't enough. So maybe once you're, oh, so Victoria, so there's only, yeah, so there's 160, sorry. Yeah, so there's 168 hours in a week, so that's good. So basically, if your number, oh no, Ariel, you're at 30. If your number is way over 24, or like even really close to 24, maybe you want to think about restructuring a little bit, or maybe reducing commitments a little bit at 27. Because the thing is, during the day, lots of unexpected things can happen. And if you have too many unexpected things happen, then you're not going to be able to adjust, and you're not going to be able to get everything done that you want to do. So, yeah. Are there any questions or comments? Omar, you're at 32. Oh no. Yeah, chores. Yeah, like today I did not get as much work done today because I was distracted because my room was so messy. So it's good to put in all that time. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully that was validating for some of you. If you realize that you're committed too much, you just can't do it all. And that's okay. We're not machines, we're humans. So now Almira is going to take us to structuring our days and our weeks now that we have our commitments figured out.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. I think that's super important for people to, like, kind of what Ariel said, like, oh, when you look at it, even if you have close to like 22 hours of things that you're committed to every day, that's a lot of stuff because things are going to come up. And that probably explains why maybe you're not able to get everything done. And I really wish we had more time in the day. And of course, there are things that we can do to like be more efficient. But at the end of the day, like things take time. You cannot sleep 8 hours in 4.5 hours. So trying to think about, I always say like, it would be so amazing if I learned Spanish. But you know what? I honestly like, I don't think I have time to learn Spanish. I could, but I would have to cut something else. And so I think it's important for us to kind of be realistic about what we're trying to achieve. But so you have all these things now that you are committed to doing. Some of them you want, some of you don't want, some of them you don't want to do, but kind of have to. And my biggest tip for folks is to create like a basic structure for your days and your weeks. Sorry if you've been to an organization training with me before, like I sound like a broken record, but I don't have any new things. It's just like, this is what it is. Create a structure for your days and your weeks. And some of us have a structure imposed, or some parts of structure imposed on us by external forces. So if you go to work and you have to be there at 8 to 4, like doesn't really matter, like that's the structure that you're given, you kind of have to do it. But I think especially in COVID times, a lot of people's structure has been kind of made more flexible. Maybe your classes are pre-recorded and you can just watch them whenever you want, or your work is from home. And that's when I think it's really critical that you create some sort of structure, because otherwise it's really easy to just kind of like float away for part of the day. And then all of a sudden you've got your 22 hours of commitments to do in the last 8 hours of the day. And I think, a lot of the things that you probably wrote down in your list to some extent kind of belong on a day. Like if there's a meeting that you have to go to, or there is some like fitness class that you do, it's on specific days. But I would also encourage people to think about some of the things that maybe don't have to be done on a certain day, but like assigning them to days in your head. So this is like a very silly example, but I have a lot of tasks, little tasks that I have to do all the time. And one of them, very small, is just like, I check the DXC credit card because people have credit cards and spend money on DXC, and I want to make sure like the credit cards didn't get stolen, or we spent the money on the right things and people didn't run off to, I don't know, Aruba with the DXC credit card. And I don't need to do that on a specific day, but like I should do it on a weekly basis. So like might as well just like assign it to Mondays. And all these little things that you have to do, like I would try to like have them kind of be on days that you do. So then it's like you're creating more of a routine for yourself. And so what I do is I use Google Calendar, which we will talk a little bit about later, but I basically create for like events, recurring events on my Google Calendar, and for tasks, recurring tasks on my task list. So for checking the credit card, there's just this task on my to-do list that every Monday it says, check the credit card. And I also have a meeting on Monday. So in my calendar, I have every Monday. So I have this like preset skeleton of my week that is always there on the Google Calendar. So if you want to go to the next slide, this is kind of what my calendar looks like before I've started. So if it was like, this is a real screenshot of January 11th to the 17th of like this, just, I did not put any of this in other than like months and months ago. It's just like they're always showing up. Now, if you're like, wow, this person's super extra, I'm sorry. Like you don't need to color code it and add emojis, whatever. You like, that's because I like to do it, not needed. But the point is like, I'm not starting the week from scratch. So in my head, weeks start on Mondays. Some people think week starts on Sundays. If you think weeks start on Wednesdays, I don't really care. But the night before the week starts, so Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, I kind of look at the week. And then I look at like, what are the one-off things that are happening? Like, for example, this Sacramento protest, you should come if you want to, is like on Tuesday. And I just like put that in there. Like, it's obviously not happening every week. Like what other events need to be plugged in that I've committed to that just need to be added onto this? Are they now conflicting with a meeting that I need to change? Like what other little like one-off things need to happen so that I have this like basic structure for my week? And I feel like that helps so much because it also is really easy if someone says to me, hey, like, let's hang out next week. Like, guess what? I'm not going to say Wednesday because that day looks like crap right now. Or like, I'm not going to commit to like anything on that. Or someone's like, hey, can you do this thing for Thursday? I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's going to happen because I have this basic understanding already of where my free time is. And all the white spaces, that'll get filled, which Erica will talk about in a moment. But it gives me like a pretty good picture of like, what is this week going to look like? And sometimes my weeks look really bad. This week, for example, once I put all the events in, I looked at it and I was supposed to be in court for 3 days starting tomorrow, which meant that all of my things were going to have to get shifted to Monday and Tuesday, and it was going to be a big mess and I wasn't going to be able to do anything. But at least I kind of feel like that helps, knowing like I kind of have a plan going into the week and have a basic understanding of how it's going to unfold. So that's the week. And then I also have this idea of like what a basic day looks like for me, which is not super exciting in the sense of like, it's pretty straightforward in that 6 to 8 is this morning routine that I do that involves, you know, like waking up and exercising and making coffee. That I kind of work from 8 to 8 with breaks, of course, and eating and all that stuff. And then from 8 to 10 is like chill and don't do anything and whatever I want to do. Of course, like I say all of this in like, this is never going to happen 100% of the time. Like, I don't know if I've ever had a day that went totally according to plan or a week that went according to plan. Some days you're just have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because Matt's on Fox News and you want to get up, and then your whole day is going to be ruined because you were up super early. But 80% of the time tends to stick to this basic schedule. And if you feel like, wow, that was a lot of stuff and I don't know where to start, I would suggest beyond doing the weekly plan, try to have some sort of morning routine. Get yourself in some sort of habit, and it could be waking up at 6 a.m. It could be waking up at like noon. I wouldn't recommend that, but for all I care, I think the point is like, when you get up, you should know what you're doing. Because if I don't have a plan when I get up, I'm going to sit in bed and look at Instagram. But I do know what I want to do. I have a routine and I try to do it as much as possible. And I think it makes me start off feeling productive and feeling like I've accomplished something already. But I know that the days where I don't have a plan or I don't have a schedule, I feel so lost and just don't feel like I really even know what I'm supposed to be doing, which is maybe shows how much I rely on systems like this. But that is my basic tips for creating repeating skeletons or structures to your weeks and your days. And I'm going to pass it back to Erica about how we're going to get into even more detail now about planning out our days.
So I know people had lots of questions for Almira, so I think we'll have
time. Sorry. I just talk and get excited.
No, I think we'll get to that at the end. I think those are all good questions. But as Almira was saying, it's most important to at least just have a general structure to your week and do your best to stick to it. But the system is not about being perfect. In fact, it's about like when things go wrong, you have a plan so you know what you need to do. And my biggest advice with time blocking is that it gets easier as you do it more. When you first start doing it, it might be really overwhelming because there's so many details to think about. And you might notice too that some tasks take way longer than others and some tasks are really quick. But the more you estimate, the better you'll get. So don't give up. And I think that if you ever had questions about time blocking, Almira and I would be more than happy to talk to you. And time blocking, time blocking can feel really overwhelming. So you can try to just do it once a week or maybe 2 days a week and just go from there. And my third tip is to schedule in breaks. So that means like cooking, eating, showering, and maybe walking your dogs. And especially since a lot of things are online now, I think it's really helpful to schedule in like movement during your day. So if you've been in a meeting for 2 hours, then maybe you should just walk for 10 minutes or something and then go back. And time blocking means that you're just setting aside different times to do different tasks. So you can like schedule exactly what you're going to do, and you can schedule rest in and stuff. And if you schedule in those breaks, it's more likely that you'll actually accomplish everything you want to do. And finally, to make your day more enjoyable and again, more feasible that you'll actually accomplish everything, when you're scheduling, try to alternate the difficulty of the tasks. So for example, if I have a hard task I really don't want to do, I might do something really easy before and after to make myself feel more accomplished and motivated in doing the tasks. Because if I get too stressed or like the work is too intense, then I might get overwhelmed and just not do anything. And now Almira is going to talk a little bit about tools that we can use to help us with scheduling.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the stuff that Erica and I talked about kind of rely on having some tools, but I am more and more convinced that it doesn't really matter what tools you use as long as you actually use them. Because this year last year, I used 3 different task managers because the one I loved got discontinued, and then we switched to another one, and then people didn't like it, and then we switched to a third one. And I don't think it really mattered. Honestly, like all of them worked. So I feel like you could get hung up on like, what's the best calendar out there? Like, what's the best to do app? And if you like playing around with those things, it's like genuinely fun, like go for it. But I wouldn't worry too much about like what you're using as long as you find some sort of tools that work for you. Because I think if you are going to rely on your brain to remember all of the things, either you're a genius or you're going to fail. And most people, I just don't think, have the capacity to remember all of those things in their head. I certainly don't. I think sometimes people think I have a good memory, but I actually have very good tools and I use them, I think, quite effectively. So in my head, the 2 tools that are pretty non-negotiable is a calendar and a task manager. They could be together. Like I know that some like apps, I've heard a lot about Notion, which I have never used. Seems intriguing and it makes me want to try it, but like whatever. Anyway, I don't know if that has a calendar and a task list together, but I think you need to have at least both of those things. Now, Erica uses like pen and paper. I don't know, you do you. Like I feel like I would lose it, but that's fine. I use Google Calendar and Asana, and like I kind of talked about how the calendar works. I think that is pretty helpful. And then Asana is just a task manager that tells me what to do. But none of these things like will work if you don't actually look at them and look at them a lot. So I make, maybe you only need to look at it like once a day. I kind of live by this, especially if you're doing time blocking. I feel like it constantly will be like, okay, what's next? What am I supposed to do next? You kind of have to look at your calendar. So what I've done is just, I always have, I mean, most of my work is on the computer. So I feel like this isn't super relevant if you're not on your computer all day long, but I'm always on Chrome, which is my internet browser, and my left tab is always my calendar, and the one right beside it is Asana, and then like everything else is what I'm working on. But those two things are always there. And you can program Google Calendar to like have a little pop-up that says this meeting is in, and you can choose, like mine is 10 minutes before, but you could do it 5 minutes before or half an hour before, and it just like pops up and says like, don't, like the next thing you have to do is this meeting. Doesn't work if you're not on your computer all the time. And I don't even know if that's necessarily recommended to be on your computer as much as I am, but that's kind of how that works for me. I think in a task manager, like whatever task manager you're using should have some ability to have recurring tasks. So for example, if you need to like pay your bills, and you don't want to forget to do that, like it's probably not a one-time deal. You're probably going to do it every month. And so a recurring task feature just means that you can set it so that, let's say today it says pay your bills, and then you mark it off and you get that satisfaction of like, yay, I'm done. But you can set it to like 1 month later, remind me again. So I would say 75% of my tasks are recurring tasks, just because of the nature of the work I do is often like do these things all the time, always run the chapter member workshop, always like create the agenda for the core meeting like every week. And then I just like comes back the next day. The other thing that I feel oddly passionate about when it comes to task lists, which is just my advice or my opinion, is that you should set the dates on your task list to when you are going to do the task. I know a lot of people have it set to like when the task is required to be done, but unless it's something that's going to take like 10 minutes, that doesn't make sense in my head. Because if I had a task that said create this training and it was due on January 5th, like January 5th would roll around, or the night of January 4th while I planned for the 5th, and it would be like, oh, I have a training tomorrow that I haven't done anything. And like I don't know, like I feel like I need to know when I'm going to actually do those things. Now, I think it depends on like how much you have on your task list. If you only have a few things, you can kind of look into the future and say, oh, like I can see what's coming up. Again, because of the nature of what I do, which is a lot of little things, I usually have like 30 plus things on each day's task list. So I cannot look a week in the future and be like, what do I need to start planning for? So if it is something like a training that I know is going to take a little bit of prep, what I'll do is say, okay, like maybe 2 weeks ago, Erica and I started working on this. I'm going to set this date, whatever 2 weeks ago, it's like December 20th or something. That's when I put it as due. And maybe it repeats every day. Maybe it links to another project plan, but I have a task of when I'm actually going to do it. I know that doesn't work for everyone, and sorry if that doesn't make any sense, but I feel like sometimes, no, not calling people out, but sometimes you come to meetings and people are like literally just doing their action items right before the meeting started, because that's when it showed up on their task list, because that's when the task was due. So I feel like, no, just figure out when you're going to do it, stick it on your calendar, and make it happen on that day. But again, main thing is like figure out like a tool that works for you and actually look at it. And that is going to be better than like 90% of the population, I think. So last thing I think we want to talk about is the pleasant world of distractions.
So thanks, Almira. There are more distractions in lockdown than, I think, for me at least, than there were before. And that can be from animals at home who are demanding attention, to talkative housemates who are home more often due to lockdown. And we're all just constantly surrounded by these distractions. Like, I'm sure this happens to other people, but this happens to me all the time, where I go on my phone to check something important, and then suddenly I end up on Instagram or some other social media platform, and I've just forgotten completely what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's really frustrating because then I end up going back to my phone over and over again, trying to remember what I was doing. And then I just like mindlessly open social media or chats. There's a lot of chats in DXE. And so first, before you get rid of these distractions, you have to identify what's distracting you. And I would bet that your phone is on that list for most people on this call. And one of my housemates, when she's doing really important work and doesn't want to be distracted, she'll put her phone in a container and just put that container on a really high shelf. And then she won't look at her phone until she's done with that task. And I don't have as much self-control as her, so I definitely would look at my phone before then, and that system wouldn't work for me. But if that does work for you, that's something you can try. And yeah, and I would be really worried about what I was missing or something. So the way I manage that is I just set timers when I'm working on something important. So I'll set a timer for 45 minutes and just put my phone away from me and force myself to work uninterrupted for those 45 minutes. And then I give myself a 10-minute break. And for that 10 minutes, I can do whatever I want, whether that's like a bathroom, a snack, or a quick phone check. And this balances the anxiety of like missing something on my phone while also getting work done. And are there other distractions that people struggle with? I know Almira mentioned the fridge, and that my roommates and I all end up in the kitchen just like staring at the fridge all the time. Okay, so then that's it for content that we've prepared, and we'd love to just address any specific questions. Maybe we can go back to what people were saying earlier. Almira, people were asking you about what deep work is for you.
Well, it's more of an ambition than actually doing it. See, this is the thing. It's like, it looks great. And then in reality, you're like, today I had a call that went to an hour instead of half an hour, and then you have to delete something off your time block. So if you're like, I can't stick to it, don't worry too much. But the idea, or what I'm trying to do, is not start my day with a bunch of like distracting things like social media or checking WhatsApp or email. And so I'm trying to start my day with things that require more actual like focus and work, because I know that once all the emails start coming in or I start having other meetings or things, it's just very hard to find a lot of time to focus. So if I need to write something or think about some big strategic thing, I'm trying to schedule that in the mornings. And I really like what Erica said about like alternating tasks. And I think that's what like my next level of time blocking is. I'm really starting to think critically about when I'm doing certain things. For example, if I have like a half-hour meeting and then a half hour's time slot and then another half-hour meeting, like thinking about doing something complicated in that half hour, like that's not going to happen. Like you're going to be right in between meetings. Maybe that other one is like 5 minutes over. You don't want to be super slammed until getting the next one. Like that's a great time to schedule a bunch of like random little things or answer emails, and then pushing the stuff that's like you want to be like on your game. It's hard to the morning. So, but again, doesn't always happen. And I usually like the gray is like a placeholder thing. So as soon as I start time blocking for the next day, I just like delete it and try to put the important things in there. Also, if people want to ask questions verbally, we can unmute you, but we've had a little troll incidents. So just want to not allow everyone to just unmute themselves randomly.
And
I don't know if they're...
George, this is really simple, but I get really motivated by crossing off tasks. I don't know if Almira feels the same.
Yeah.
Anna, we can unmute you. Let's see.
Hi, I just had a question, like on your calendar, what it was like deep something, like deep work. What exactly is that?
Yeah, it's just like I was saying, work that requires like more focus, concentration, harder things that I'm trying to do at the beginning without being too distracted by like a lot of little things. I feel like most of the things, like I have like 3 things that are like hard per day, and then like 25 little things that are great to do when you are tired and just want to be like, I don't want to think. So deep work is the other stuff. It's actually a book that this is bad. It's a book by Cal Newport called Deep Work, of which I have read about a quarter. So I got inspired by that, but I didn't finish it. I'm just looking at other questions. What is my most useful hotkeys for GCal? I don't use any. I don't know. I feel like I'm not super efficient with that. Color coding. Can you go back? I don't know if I know it by top of my head. Okay, blue is exercise. Gray is like going to be replaced by other things. Purple is meetings. Yellow is just like, it's not really fun, but it's also not work. It's like things you have to do, like commuting. Green is actions. And then the light blue stuff is just like, actually fun stuff. And the green, which is not really there, like the light green, is the work. Like, because I haven't actually put in any of my work yet. So the night before, I'll like put in all the stuff in the light green, and slowly the calendar will get more and more filled out. But I think that's everything. Oh, Tanya got it. She did pretty good. What do you do about time gaps? A meeting was planned for 2 hours to finish in 1 hour. Is there a method you use to queue ongoing tasks? I don't know if you want to answer that, Erica.
Well, I think I forgot to say this, but at the beginning of each week on Sunday, I'll write down like a list of weekly tasks that I have to do, and then I'll place them where they go. And it's similar to Almira, where I then just get this like skeleton, and then the night before I'll just fill it in. And so I normally just have a list of things that I need to do. And so I would probably just look at that list and try to knock something out. Or I might look later in the day and see if I could knock something out then, like earlier than I was planning to.
Other questions that I'm looking at. What's the check mark and the black box?
That was the Microsoft To Do and the Notion. Yeah.
Microsoft To Do was the failed attempt of what we tried to use. So if you're looking for a task list, maybe don't start with that, because a lot of people hated it. But again, if it works for you. And yeah, Tiffany said, are you using Asana, Todoist, and Google Calendar? I'm not using Todoist, just Asana and Google Calendar. And I honestly don't even use Asana. I think the way most people are supposed to use Asana. I just use it as a task list. But I think it's because I don't have a lot of like big projects. Like maybe if you were like a video editor or like this director, and you'd have like all these things that go like this. But my role is kind of like a manager. So I feel like I don't have a ton of stuff like that. But yeah. And so Tanya, okay, this is really funny. If you are older than Erica, you know what I mean? But in the old days, when I was in university, there wasn't Wi-Fi. And so it was really easy to not distract yourself, because you would unplug the internet. Like you would unplug your computer from the internet, and then it's just like, too bad, you can't be distracted. And you can kind of replicate that by like quitting WhatsApp, like quitting Signal, put your phone on airplane mode. Like you can do those things, but I feel like it is, I mean, if you watch The Social Dilemma, like they're in purposely trying to make you addicted. So it is very difficult to not kind of get distracted by those.
And then Cassie had a good question about how do you handle getting semi-urgent messages all day long with people just asking you questions. This is something I've done. I don't know if you can implement this, Cassie, but I told people that if it was actually urgent, then they should just call me. But if it was semi-urgent, then they can text me. And like if I'm doing my deep work where it's only 45 minutes and it's only semi-urgent, then maybe it can wait those 40 minutes. But if it's urgent, then they can just call me. And I just did that with people in my life who message me a lot. I just told them to stop doing that and either call me if it was really urgent, or just to keep messaging me, and I would get to them when I could.
Omar, did you have a question that you wanted to ask? Sorry, hold on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I guess it was two. So like if you can break down the difference between a task manager and the calendar, and then maybe offline or through Discord, if somebody can show me how to link the phone and my laptop together. So like I'm looking at the Google calendars, and thank you.
So I think Erica kind of uses one thing together. So I don't know, you can answer that. But for me, the calendar, so the task manager is like what I'm going to do, and the calendar is when I'm going to do it. So that's kind of like, there is relation in the sense of like, for me, I don't put meetings on my task manager because it just shows up on my calendar, but all the things I have to do that are like work tasks, like plan a protest or like, I don't know, like create a budget or all the things that would come up, they go onto my task list. And then eventually they make their way onto my calendar of when I'm going to do them. But in my head, I think of like task manager, what, and calendar, when. But I don't know if that, like, I think Erica, maybe if you have it all on a notepad, it might be a little different for you.
I think it used to all be on my planner. I used to just have it all together. But now that I need to keep track of Zoom links and everything, meetings are in my Google Calendar, and then tasks and stuff are in my planner. And then, Omar, does that answer? Cool. And
like linking stuff, like Google Calendar, I feel like you could download the app and just sign in, but honestly, like, I don't know like the specific instructions. Most things, if you just make sure you have the same login, like most people have so many email addresses that I think that's where it gets confusing, where you're like, which email address did I use for this? Mm-hmm. And then, but if you use the same email to download the app on your phone and your computer, it should work.
Yeah. And one nice thing about Google Calendar is, like, this is what I do since I have so many emails. I am subscribed to my other calendars on one email account, so I can see all of my calendars on one email. And then Tiffany had a good question. One of my biggest struggles is resisting putting one more thing in that makes me run late to the next. How do you make yourself stop what you're doing and move on?
Have consequences for being late. I don't know. I don't know. To me, it's not that hard to stop something. Starting is so much harder. Yeah, I feel like maybe someone else has better advice for that.
Yeah, I get that, because I think that sometimes I try to cram things in, but I think this just goes back to like forcing yourself to schedule more often, because then you get better at estimating time of how long things will take. Or maybe you can just show up early to the next stop, and then if you get there early and you do have time, then maybe you can do something.
I'm looking at the questions. George asked a while ago, like, how often are you shifting your mindset? Maybe, I don't know exactly what you mean. Like, do you mean like shifting in between tasks? Yeah, I shift a lot, which is like, I think, again, it's like, I think you have to think a little bit about like, what kind of work do you do? Like, if you're someone who's like this, like, I don't know, like this, like these like long intellectual things of like creating something, like if you're a video editor, like maybe you don't want to be shifting all the time because it's going to take you so long, or you're writing a book, like, you know, you want to like have these big chunks of time. I don't feel like I do that kind of work very much. And that's the attempt of the deep work, doing it in the morning, because the rest of the day is like 15 minutes, everything, something else. But that doesn't, I don't know if that's like, I don't think that means that people should do that. It just depends on like what kind of work you are doing. And I find it easy to multitask and shift. Other people I think are like, I'm going to be like super invested in this for an entire day. And I think that's fine. So I don't know.
Something I do is I try to make most of my meetings in the afternoon and then like work in the morning, just because I'm a morning person. And so my brain is just faster in the morning. And I get like sluggish as the day goes on. And especially I think balancing school with activism, I'll do like DXE work on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then school work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that really helps too.
I forgot to say at the beginning, which is like, yeah, I think one of the reasons why I think it's very valuable for Erica to be here is because she's not doing full-time activism. And I know that's not really most people's reality. I'm very privileged that I get to do, DXE organizing essentially all the time, and I don't have to have another job. Most people don't get to do that. So I think it's like kind of, looking at like, what does it look like when you also have to work or go to school or do these other responsibilities, I think is more realistic for a lot of people.
And then Cassie had a good question.
Do you have days where you're, like 100, like that's why I'm like, okay, people are gonna they look at the calendar and you look at time blocking and it's like, wow. But then the reality is like, it's kind of like eating in my head, which is like, I think you should like mostly eat healthy, but you're gonna eat crap sometimes, and that's like good. And there's gonna be days where you just like don't do stuff, or I feel like there's definitely days where I kind of like feel off, or especially if I don't do my morning routine, like, oof, is this like bad? And I think I feel less stressed about that because I try to do things like not like at the last minute. If you kind of give yourself a buffer of like, this is due on Friday, so I'm going to try to do it like Tuesday or Wednesday. But then if you're just like, it didn't happen, I didn't have time, or it's like something else came up, then it's not like this crisis mode every time something goes wrong. So I feel like rarely do I stick to my time block, but rarely does it cause me so much anxiety that I don't, because I have that buffer. If that makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything Almira just said. I think especially with work that we're doing, it's really important to give yourself days where you're not being as productive, and that's okay. And I feel like maybe I said this earlier, but maybe I just said it in my head. But we're humans and we need rest and food, and like we can't just be doing work all the time. And so that's, yeah.
Yeah, y'all should see the number of times I like drag that wake up just a little bit later. You can see like what it looks like after. Tanya says, does it ever happen to you that you want to do everything so perfect that you don't want to do it if you feel like you're not going to do it 100%? I feel like in the past, but I feel like now I don't know. Now I don't get that worried about it anymore. But I know people struggle a lot with perfectionism and then just like not wanting to do it. I don't know.
That happens to me a lot with like writing essays, and like just honestly like any school assignment I don't want to do, and I'll put it off. And I think this is why this is what Almira was mentioning too about trying to give yourself a buffer. Like I'll frequently lie to myself in my planner about when an essay is due. And most of the time it really works. Like I trick myself into thinking an essay is due a week before it's actually done. And then I'll stress about, and because it's in my planner, it's not connected to my laptop where I could legitimately look at the due date. And so then I just freak out and I just write it. And then it's done a week before. And yeah, so I don't know if that's really a tip, but the tip I guess is just to give yourself a buffer when you're doing tasks, and to also to accept that like maybe the first draft of doing something is going to be awful, but that's okay, because that's what the first drafts of things are like.
How is your day if your morning routine didn't go the normal way? Sometimes if I don't, like if I have so right now my foot is injured, which means my morning routine is more chill because I'm not running. But often what will happen is I won't have time to run before the first like thing I actually have to do, like a meeting. So I'll try to like shove exercise somehow in the afternoon, which often is difficult. But that's typically what gets cut is working out. So Tiffany said this thing, which I think is really important, which is I notice when I make something recurring in the calendar, not only do I not do it, but I stop seeing it, and then my calendar becomes worthless and like I've seen that a lot, especially with task list, when people have so many tasks that are overdue. It's like, it's not even real anymore. And so that's why I'm like, it's not enough to have it. Like you have to do it. Like I use my calendar and my task list like religiously. And if I don't do something, I change the due date. Or and I don't always, like a lot of times I will move the time blocks around on my calendar because I want it to be a reflection of like what actually happened. And I think if you don't use it, yeah, it's just like, that's nice. Like if you have 40 overdue tasks in your calendar, like where do you even start? And I've seen this, and then I understand why no one would be like, screw that, I'm not even gonna look at it anymore. So like actually use it, actively use it, because otherwise I think it's just like they're suggestions instead of things that you're actually doing.
And then Tiffany asked about using others to make sure that you're accountable. And I said I don't do that. And Almira, I don't think you do. But now you have to be accountable to all of us since we've seen your calendar.
Yeah, I think part of this is like Erica and I are leading this training because we really like this. And this is stuff that's fun. And in the same way that there are other things that we're not good at that come easier to other people, this comes harder to other people. And so it's not going to be like, you're going to have like, I don't know, like maybe you need more external pressure, or it's not going to be as perfect, or it's going to be something that like requires more effort to do than like me for this. I don't know what it is, genetics or something. Like I wanted organization supplies when I was like 7 years old for Christmas. Like, I don't know. Like, so I'm just like in this area, like not a struggle, but there's other things that I struggle with, like being creative or like being able to like write well. It takes me so much longer and it's like hard. So I wouldn't, this thing comes easier, but for other people, I think it's just going to requires more effort. But I've seen people make huge improvements that don't have this as like this natural thing that they just enjoy. So use more, I guess, external pressure, but I feel like I'm very competitive with myself when it comes to this. So I don't need it, but I also do provide maybe that external accountability for some other people.
And I think going off of what Almira just said, I think it's important that you just try different systems to see what works for you, because like one of them will stick and one of them you'll like, or you'll learn to like. And so these are things that work for us, but you can just try what works for you.
I think that those are all the questions, but we have a couple more minutes. So I really appreciate all the questions. That was awesome, because that's kind of what we were hoping for, but sometimes people are very quiet in the chat. Yeah, bullet journal. That's what Erica uses, right? You can watch a lot of YouTube videos about bullet journaling.
Yeah. I have a lot of pens that I use in my bullet journal.
Well, I wanted to say thank you all so much for coming. And again, just to reiterate what Erica said, give it a shot. It's not going to be perfect, but I think that with some like motivation and like some like just like sometimes like sheer grit, and I think people can make a lot of improvements in this area. And I think it's important because we are here because we want to make, do good work. And most of us, I think, are thinking about activism, but also there's all these other things we have to do. But with good time management and with good organization, we can do more and do like more effective work for animals. And that's certainly like, this is not the answer to animal liberation, but I think it is very related to activism. Because like a lot of times people struggle with is like they just have these ideas and they want to do all these things and they can't figure out how to like actually execute them. So like Erica said, give it a shot, see what works for you. And we're very happy to kind of give more suggestions or help with time blocking if anybody wants. And yeah, Shalom says, I'll try to focus on completing the task. I also think like the time blocking does help with that because you're like, I got 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes, just do it. I tell myself this so much. If you listen to the podcast with Wayne, like everything I hate doing, I'm just like, whatever. Like how bad could it be? It's half an hour. You have to clean the bathroom. It's half an hour. Like just do it. It's not this like never ending thing. Like, I don't know. I feel like if I know how miserable it's going to be, it's fine as long as it ends. So yeah. One more. See, Omar knows. When we were in jail or when we were waiting for the people in jail, it's just like, just 20 more minutes and they'll come out. But that turned out to be a lie. Cool. Well, enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right. And it was recorded. Only the first 5 minutes were missing.
Okay, cool.
All right. Bye, everybody.